Okay, so today we're going to have a look at Rendezvous with Rama. Now this is it's in the book. It's a science fiction story by Arthur C. Clarke. Now I'm not a huge fan of Arthur C. Clarke. As a young reader at school, I kind of read some of his stuff and I found it dull. He goes into a lot of descriptions of the technology, which of course is made up, instead of the story or the characters, and I never liked his work. Now, Rendezvous with Rama is one of his more famous stories. In fact, it's being developed right now as a novel, as a movie. It's about a huge spacecraft, 50 kilometers long, big cylindrical thing floating into our atmosphere, and a small ship goes out to investigate and to see what it's all about. Pretty mundane plot. It was first written back in 1973, so it's a pretty old story, and it shows. I mean, the movie, that I imagine they're going to update a great deal of things about this story so that it's so that it makes more sense. I'm not going to go too much into the story. We'll read the excerpt and then I'll go through some of the ideas that the excerpt gives us. So if you turn to page 1991, we'll be able to have a look at the story itself. Now, this part is from where the Earth has sent out a ship to investigate this monstrous thing, this 50-kilometer cylinder. Now, the technology at the time, the idea was that this cylinder would exist and it would rotate, and the rotational force, the centrifugal motion, would create artificial gravity by driving everything to the outside of the circle. If you've ever seen a Wheel of Death, where motorcycles can drive around the inside, the centrifugal force pushes you to the perimeters. It's kind of a crude idea of generating gravity. It wouldn't work long term. It would cause too many problems with your balance and your mobility. But at the time, it was believed it could work, and it still could. I mean, we could make other discoveries and work out how to make this function. And anything's better than having no gravity at all in space. We've already proved from people going around the Earth in orbit that your muscle mass disappears, and then your bone mass starts to suffer as well. So in zero gravity, the human body suffers a great deal, and you need a healthy body to maintain a healthy mind. So we're going to have some kind of artificial gravity if we want to travel in space. But this 50-kilometer thing is supposed to be rotating, and the floor would be laid out around the inside. It's a pretty routine science fiction idea. It's still used in science fiction today, but I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it would be possible for long-term travel to work on this principle. The only other principle within our current understanding of technology would be constant acceleration. So we accelerate at a constant speed, the same as gravity. So we're always accelerating. The danger of that is, of course, once we get to the speed of light, we turn into energy. So we're dead anyway. So at the moment, those two ideas are pretty crude, and they're not going to work. We need to work out how gravity really works and create artificial gravity as a technology if we want to travel any distance in space. Where this story falls down is the idea that these aliens who are traveling the galaxy in this monstrous spacecraft haven't discovered artificial gravity, but have discovered other forms of long-distance travel. Okay, so page 90. Now Endeavour was hovering less than 1,000 meters above the north pole of the cylinder. Endeavour is the human spacecraft, at the very center of the slowly turning disk. This end had been chosen because it was the one in sunlight. As Rama rotated, the shadows of the short, enigmatic structures near the axis swept steadily across the metal plane. The northern face of Rama was a gigantic sundial, measuring out the swift passages of its 4-minute day. Landing a 5,000-ton spaceship at the center of a spinning disk was the last of Commander Norton's worries. It was no different from docking at the axis of a large space station. Endeavour's lateral jets had already given her a matching spin, and he could trust Lieutenant Joe Calvert to put her down as gently as a snowflake, with or without the aid of the nav computer. In 3 minutes, said Joe, without taking his eyes from the display, we'll know if it's made of antimatter. Norton grinned as he recalled some of the more hair-raising theories about Rama's origin. If that unlikely speculation was true, in a few seconds there would be the biggest bang since the solar system was formed. The total annihilation of 10,000 tons would, briefly, provide the planets with a second sun. Yet the mission profile had allowed even for this remote contingency. Endeavour had squirted Rama with one of her jets from a safe 1,000 kilometers away. Nothing whatsoever had happened with the expanding cloud of vapour arrived on target, and a matter-antimatter reaction involving even a few milligrams would have produced an awesome fireworks display. Antimatter is literally the inverse of matter, and if the two were ever to collide, there would be a complete release of all stored energy. To put that in perspective, general explosives only release about 2 or 3% of their energy when they explode. High explosive releases, I think it's about 15%, and that relies on the shock wave detonating the next particle of explosive. So the shock wave detonates the explosives inside the chemical reaction. So instead of a chemical reaction igniting it, the shock wave detonates the next particle, and we get this wave. In nuclear reactions, nuclear explosions, we release about 30% of all the energy stored in the material. In an antimatter explosion, we would release all of the energy. And to put that in perspective, this would have enough energy in it to be a nuclear explosion if we could touch this against antimatter and blow it up. So the idea, this is ridiculous. So the idea is that Rama could have been built completely out of antimatter and still been in existence is ridiculous, because there are still particles floating around in space. So they squirt their jets, but that would still, if a jet exhaust hit this thing, there would still be enough of an explosion to blow everything to pieces. So it's not a sensible option. Norton, like all space commanders, was a cautious man. He had looked long and hard at the northern face of Rama, choosing the point of touchdown. After much thought, he decided to avoid the obvious spot, the exact center of the axis itself. A clearly marked circular disc 100 meters in diameter was centered on the pole, and Norton had a strong suspicion that it must be the outer seal of an enormous airlock. The creatures who had built this hollow world must have had some way of taking their ships inside. This was the logical place for the main entrance, and Norton thought it might be unwise to block the front door with his own vessel. But this decision generated other problems. If Endeavour touched down even a few meters from the axis, Rama's rapid spin would start her sliding away from the pole. At first, the centrifugal force would be very weak, but it would be continuous and inexorable. Commander Norton did not relish the thought of his ship slithering across the polar plane, gaining speed minute by minute until it was slung off into space at 1,000 kilometers an hour when it reached, until it was slung off into space when it reached the edge of the disk. It was possible that Rama's minute gravitational field, about 1,000th of Earth's, might prevent this from happening. It would hold Endeavour against the plane with a force of several tons, and the surface was sufficiently rough, the ship might stay near the pole. But Commander Norton had no intention of balancing an unknown frictional force against a quite certain centrifugal one. Fortunately, Rama's designers had provided an answer. Equally spaced around the polar axis were 3 low pillbox-shaped structures about 10 meters in diameter. If Endeavour touched down between any two of those, the centrifugal drift would fetch her up against them, and she would be held firmly in place, like a ship glued against a quayside by oncoming waves. Now, this is what I mean about Arthur C. Clarke being boring. We've got this long description of a landing that they haven't done yet. There's no drama here. Contact in 15 seconds, said Joe, as he tensed himself above the duplicate controls, which he hoped he would not have to touch. Commander Norton became acutely aware of all that had come to focus on this instant of time. This surely was the most monumentous landing since the first touchdown on the moon a century and a half ago. The grey pillboxes drifted slowly upwards outside the control port. There was the last hiss of a reaction jet and a barely perceptible jar. In the weeks that had passed, Commander Norton had often wondered what he would say at this moment, but now it was upon him. History chose his words, and he spoke almost automatically, barely aware of the echo from his past. Rama base, Endeavour has landed. Okay, I mean, it's not a long section from the book. It's not a long extract, so we can accept that there's not much drama here, but and this is why I don't like Arthur C. Clarke. We've got this, they're landing on this alien spacecraft. Now this could be a very dramatic scene where they're measuring things up, where the people are tense, where there's this unknown quantity. They're landing on an alien vessel for the first time in mankind's history. And there's no drama, because all we've got instead is a description of the technical side of this. Will it drift off? Is it rotating too fast? Is there this? What we lose here is any sense that these people are real people and that they're going through any kind of emotional journey. And that's why I don't like Arthur C. Clarke. That's why I find his writing too dry, and I don't really enjoy it. He's very scientific and he's very clever, and I do appreciate that, but I just don't find him entertaining. Which I think also there has to be an element of entertainment to make a book work, or any story, and there just isn't with this one. I don't know anything about Commander Norton. I don't know anything about Joe something or other, Calvert. I don't know anything about them. I don't care about them. They're not people to me. They're just names on a page. And it takes the next step. We have to go to the next step to make those characters real so that we know enough about them to care about them. And I don't care about them. All we've got is this long description of things that Arthur C. Clarke knows about this world he's created that he's telling us. And it's just like having a conversation with a boring man over dinner and just thinking, will you please shut up? Just tell me something funny, make me laugh. And we don't get any of those things. That's why I dislike Arthur C. Clarke's work in general. I just find him dry, I find him monotonous, and I feel like he's showing off. I feel like when we read his stuff, he's telling us all about what he knows, and he's not taking us into an emotional journey with his characters. For that reason, I don't enjoy his books. I've read a few, and I've never really liked them. Now, in the course of this story, the drama, the plot comes from the idea that this is an alien vessel, and they're exploring it to find out what's inside, what it's all about. It's obviously very large and has been built by something very advanced. Mostly it's a human journey. It's a human scaled story. So it's about the people going inside, finding what they find. It's a very simple design, and it's been copied many, many times. I mean, the idea of this tube with the building on the inside of it. There was a TV series, Babylon 5, where the space stations built by Earth were all the same design. They were a tube cylinder with all the floor laid out along the inside, and it was rotating slowly. Trek, The Voyage Home, the alien probe is again a 50-kilometer cylinder with a ball that comes out to as a probe. So the probe itself looks very much like this Rama thing, and I think that's deliberate. I think these people who made Star Trek were a fan of this book. They were a fan, at least, of the technology described in this story. As I said, what I don't like is just the lack of drama. It's very clever, but it's not very entertaining. So, I want you to answer questions 1 through 16 and submit them in the attendance question, where I will review them later and make sure you've done them. Pay careful attention to the vocabulary. That's something that very likely will turn up in the test. Good luck.